I attended was named Maple School, and I walked 2.5 miles to get to school each day. And if it rained, why then my folks took me with a buggy or wagon drawn by horses. I was a very bashful child, and the first day of school, I was so bashful that I couldn't raise my hand to get the signal to go to the toilet, which was an outside wood building, outside of the main school building.
And what did you do?
I wet my pants. And that embarrassed me, and I always remember the experience. And they called the outside toilet a back house or shanty. My first experience with an automobile was around 1908 on with our rural mailman was the first in my vicinity to have one. It was a Model T. And my family, they farmed two farms, and we children would ride horseback between the farms carrying different articles that was needed. And one day I was riding an old stiff horse and carrying a sack of flour to deliver to the other place. And we met this automobile that was driven by the mailman. That was the first that I saw an automobile, and that was the first that the horse saw an automobile. And it turned around and ran as fast as it could, and it frightened me, of course, very much. The horse really couldn't run that fast because it had foundered by eating too much oats or corn, and it got stiff in the legs and they couldn't run very fast. So that was my first experience with an automobile. Can you stop? Now, the early days when we harvested the oat crop with a machine called a binder, and this was pulled by horses. Then they bound the machine bound the oats into bundles, and then we would, the man would take the bundle and make a shot, or just several shots. They would put about 8, 10, 12 bundles in to make a shot, and they would set them together to make them stand up and make a pretty little shot. And they did that all through the field, and it was, in hot weather, it was extremely hot and tiresome. And then they had a water boy that would haul water to the working man, and the water boy was usually a son of the family or a young person, and they would fill jugs with water in a cart or a wagon drawn by horses, of course, and that's the way they watered the man. And the women cooked dinner for all the workers, and neighbors came together to help whenever the group were thrashing. And this was quite a thing. And the things I remember, they always had to have pie. So they always had pie and cake for dessert. And I remember a special dish was prunes and apricots cooked together. Pretty much everybody had to have prunes and apricots cooked together for the thrashing meal. And it was interesting for the young men and the women. They would eye each other. The girls were serving, and these men would, the young men, and then they'd get acquainted, and sometimes dates resulted, and they really got married. And a new spring hat in the spring was almost a must. There were some beautiful creations, and the hat shops were full of hats, and whenever you went to get a new hat, you just tried on hat after hat before you found the one that you decided on, but it was great fun. And we would go to town in a horse and buggy, of course, to buy these hats. And the Fairbury Fair was something that I remember. That stood out. That seemed like the most famous fair around that I ever remembered. I guess there were other fairs, but the Fairbury Fair really stood out when I went with the child. I sure was thinking that was the treat of my lifetime because I didn't go very much away from home, and the Fairbury Fair was a highlight. And of course, I remember the lemonade and the ice cream cones. Stop.
Oh, okay.
And I remember the tramps that came to our house and asked for something to eat. And tramps they came along quite often in the days when I was a girl. And we usually gave them something. It was nothing fancy. We gave them bread, usually a sandwich. And sometimes we had meat, and sometimes just bread and butter and jelly is what they got. And some seemed real grateful. And then there was others that we watched, and when they got down the road a ways, they pitched up. They expected something better than bread and butter. And the gypsies, we had gypsies. They traveled in wagons pulled by horses. Then later they got fancier and they had cars. But at the time I remember them, they were pulled with horses. And then they would camp different places that would come near your place, or they would camp wherever they could find a place to camp. Then they'd build a fire to cook their food. And they were noted for stealing quite a bit. And then we always were on guard with our chickens. They liked to steal chickens and eggs from our hen houses and things. And we, was always on the lookout when gypsies came. And I know when I was a child, that frightened me to think, gypsies, you couldn't trust them. So they were a frightening thing to me, really. And the men were great horse traders, and they would dicker with the men that they came in contact with on the farm. And sometimes they traded and got different horses. And they also offered to tell our fortunes. And then they would sometimes tell outlandish things. I don't think we ever really believed them. Very often, I was afraid to let them tell my fortune. They were scary to me. And I never did let them tell my fortune, but the different people would tell what they told us. We'd laugh about it. And they would, there was a pack peddlers. They were real interesting people. They walked and carried this great big pack on their back. I don't see how they ever did it. And sell their wares, and they usually had goods, cloth material. And then they had toilet articles and combs and brushes and that sort of thing. I can't remember all of the trick and things, but we always enjoyed when they showed their wares. Us kids, we'd stand around and look, and it was real interesting. And they talked mostly in a brogue. I don't know what countries they were from. I really don't know. I think some were Italians, but they was different ones. They were usually dark-skinned, and they talked very broken English. You could hardly understand what they were saying. Sometimes we bought stuff, and sometimes we didn't. Oh, and then at Christmas time, we would, there was little rural churches, they're not, very far apart, just a lot of them throughout the country. And then we young people would always go to their special Christmas program, and that was the thing that we just did. And then they had the Christmas tree, and don't you know, they had lighted candles on the tree. As far as I remember, we never had a fire, but I'll never remember why, because it was really dangerous. But they all did it, and we accepted it as a matter of course. Lessons from a teacher who came to our home. She traveled through the country and gave lessons, and that's how I was able to take lessons. And her name was Anna Harms, and I progressed with my music and got to be that I could play quite well. And so then I was awarded a junior certificate, they called it, with, if I went on and kept on with my music, then I would eventually get a teacher's certificate. Of course, you didn't have to do like you do nowadays to get a certificate, I don't think. And so my teacher told me if I would, he thought I could start to begin teaching. So then she turned over some of the pupils that she had to me, and that's when I started. And I had a few, and they told from mouth to mouth that they liked me as a teacher. And so then I got more pupils, and I worked up quite a big class. I don't remember the exact number, about 25 or 30 at one time. And I traveled through the country. Well, at first I drove a horse and buggy a good bit of the time, but then we got a Model T Ford, and I drove the Model T Ford and went from house to house. And that was quite a lot of fun. And then sometimes if I'd start out in the morning and I didn't want to go home for noon, I would eat dinner with one of my pupils, home people. And then I'd give a music lesson free for my dinner. And I taught several years, and then Roy came along, and I got married, and that ended my music career. I was always sorry that I didn't keep on with my music more. But of course I had my youngsters, and I didn't have too much time to practice the piano, so that's the way it went. And but my first experience with a radio was when we had headphones, and we only had one set of headphones, and we'd take turns, you know, to listen, and that was quite an event. But there was a lot of static on the radio, but we thought it was great stuff to listen to get the I remember WLS particularly on and the barn dance in the early years. And the telephones were really something with the party lines, and there was several families that was called a party line, and you could listen in and hear the conversation of other people talking, and that was always a joke because people, let on like they didn't listen in on their neighbors, but everyone did because they would drop something that they had heard sometime. We knew that they wouldn't have heard unless they listened, in on the, and let's see, what did they call them?
Robbery.
Robbery, yeah. Robbery. And that was quite a joke about the telephone. And sometimes it was hard to get the use of the line, too. Yeah, we had that trouble. And then we used to have hedge fences instead of wire fences. We had hedge fences all through the country between the farms. And of course, then you had to cut hedge and keep that trim. Although some of them let it grow up real tall like trees, and they was great big hedges. But I remember Roy cutting hedge, and that was a really hard, tiring work. And then there used to be a grocery wagon that went out from the grocery store. It was called, the one that went through where we lived was called the Ballback Man. It was Ballback's store at Chenoa, and we kids thought that was quite an event because they carried just things from the grocery store that the people would be apt to use. And I know bologna and cheese were some of the things I remember, and the various canned stuff and other things. And then the Ballback Man would give us kids candy. This was free, just a treat. And it was different flavors. It was lemon and peppermint and licorice and different flavors. And that was heaven to us kids. We always just run out when the Ballback Man came. And then we used to have the coal stove that burned coal, and we had to carry out the ashes every day. That was quite a job. And the cook stove had a reservoir on the back of the stove that we filled with water, And we had warm water or hot water according because of how much fire we made in the place where we fed the fire. But if we had a lot of fire in there, well, then it heated the water real hot. So we really had good convenience in hot water. And graduated to a hard coal stove. That was the heating stove that we used in the living room. And it was a different kind of a coal. We had soft coal and hard coal. I really don't know what the difference was. That they called it hard and soft, but the hard coal burned much slower, and it would hold the heat longer. Then it would last all night, through the night. And that was quite a treat because the other ones didn't. We always have to build them up in the morning. Or sometimes they banked down. They called it banking down, but it didn't hold as good as the hard coal. And it had isinglass in the doors. We could see the fire. And we just thought we had progressed terribly from the old pot-bellied iron stove. And we could fill this hard coal stove up from the top, put a bucket or 2 buckets or whatever. I didn't remember how much we put in it. Then it would just slowly feed down. But sometimes it'd get stuck, and then you know we'd have trouble. We'd have to kind of poke it, shake it down. And my first experience with a washing machine was the one worked by hand. You just, use your hand to work it back and forth, and the wringer you turn by hand to wring the clothes through. But I used to wash some on the board, but I can't say that I did that too long after I was married. I think I had a machine quite soon after we were married. And I got acquainted with the Jones girl after we moved in that vicinity, and I went to visit there. And of course, I was there one time when Roy came in with a field machine and the horses hitched to it. And I remember that he was unhitching, and us girls went out there to talk to him. That was the first time I saw Roy. And then we got acquainted naturally, and then we began dating, and it went on from there. And I think I was close to 17, and then after that we became engaged, and then at the time that he left for the service, when he was drafted into the service, it was 1918, I believe. And then we had become engaged before that time, and so we were engaged to be married at the time that he left for camp. And then he was at camp in Georgia, Camp Wheeler. Yes, Camp Wheeler in Georgia. And he was there a while. I don't remember just how long, but then he was sent to New York. And then from New York, he was sent across the pond to France and England. I think he was in England part of the time. And then he was there, but before he got to the front lines, the armistice was signed November 11th. And, I can remember that was one of the happiest days of my life when that armistice was signed. Everybody was so jubilant. And he came home in the spring. And I'm not sure whether it was that year or the next year that we were married December 20th, because it was 1918 when he went to the service, and we was married in 1920, so there must have been a year in between there. That I was thinking that we were married the same year that he came home from the service in the spring, and then we were married in December. But I believe that wasn't quite the way it was. I think there was a year. I remember these dates distinctly. 1918, the war was, and I married in 1920. I'm sure of that. And well, you want to start? The first year we was married, we lived there for 12 years. We lived on the Caldwell farm, and Salem Church was just across the road from where we lived. So that's where we went to church. And of course, at that time, as I said before about the Christmas tree, there was various churches throughout the community, country churches that people went to. And then butchering day was really something. As a child, it was a highlight in my life. We'd get up real early and build a fire under the butchering kettle to heat the water to scald the hog. And then they would kill the hog and put them in this hot water. I think they got the water out of the kettle with a bucket or something and threw over the hogs to scald them. And then they'd lay them down on a board, and they'd have scrapers that they'd scrape the hair off. And then after the hair scraped off, they would hang them up on a thing, to hang them up on, attached to the barn or someplace. And they would cut them down the middle to get the intestines and the insides out. And then they would wash that real good with water. And then they would lay them down on the board to cut them into the various hams and shoulders and ribs and pork chops and backbone. Backbone is what we like. It was just left in the original, chopped into pieces. And when we'd have roast backbone, there would be a lot of bone there, but the meat that was on it was tenderloin, and it was real good. And then we, they cut up they cut the sausage, the little scraps of pieces that they trimmed off of the shoulders and the hams and the other parts, and these tidbits for sausage. Then they would grind them in a sausage grinder, and that's how we made our sausage out of the scrap pieces. And if you like fat sausage, you put fat scraps, and if you like them more lean, you use more of the leaner scraps. And that was one thing Roy and I differed on. He liked fat sausage, and I liked lean sausage. But we never had any serious problems. It's just that I liked lean sausage. And and then sometimes the women cleaned the intestines, to stuff the sausage in. And that was a kind of a gruesome job. I never really did it. I think my mother-in-law did when we butchered. And then they made cloth sacks, long cloth sacks that they stuffed the sausage in. And of course, they had a machine. It was really a lard press that they used to stuff the sausage. They used it for lard. Oh, I forgot. Well, I'll tell that later. I'm telling about sausage now. They would put this intestine or the cloth thing on a spout on this machine, and then they turn that machine, and it would squeeze it in and make a sausage or a link sausage. And we always liked that real well. And then the lard press, they cooked all the fat, chunks of fat. They'd cut it in little cubes and put it in this huge butchering kettle that we heated the water in to scald them. Then we'd make the lard. We'd have big paddles to stir the meat, and it would cook out. And at the last, you had to be real careful because it cooked a long time after you had to pull the fire away from the kettle, and sometimes they wouldn't begin to pull the fire away soon enough, and it would overcook, and then it would kind of turn brown, and that was a horrible calamity. But most people knew what to do, and we usually had white lard, just brown once in a while, because that's the way they made lard. And the sausage was sure good. Well, and having babies in earlier years was a far cry from today. The doctor wasn't informed until labor pains began, and we were lucky if he got there in time. Sometimes he didn't, like 2 times with me. I had Dick and I, when was born, we had big snowstorms, and neighbors had to clear the road so the doctor could get through. And the roads were dirt, and they would mire down in the mud or the snow or whatever. They did have some gravel roads. Of course, that was quite a thing to have gravel roads. And of course, more came about as the years passed by. One night, Trevor and Lois Jones came to our door with bags of groceries. They had got stuck in the mud, and it was freezing mud. And they walked on home later, but left the groceries, and then Roy went to help him in the morning to dig out of the frozen mud. And the one-room schoolhouses were scattered out throughout the country, too. I don't remember just how many miles apart, 2 or 3 miles, but there was a lot of schools then. And all the 8 classes were taught by one teacher in one-room school. And the teacher had to go early and build the fires in the wintertime and sweep the floors and do all the janitor work and teach all 8th grade. Sometimes an older boy of the pupils in the school would be hired by the teacher, and the teacher boarded sometimes with one of the neighbors of the ones that went to school. She would board there through the year. And their wages, I think, was $30 or $40 a month. I believe that was the range. And then just before I got married, I visited my grandma in Peoria, and she was breaking up housekeeping at the time that I was there, so she gave me a lot of things to keep house with. And I could have brought more home if I could have carried them. But I had a suitcase, and she gave me some of her flat irons. You know, those are just big old irons that you heated on a cook stove to make them hot to iron with. And I had them in my suitcase, and I rode on the train. That was when we had trains. And I rode home, and the conductor looked at me so quizzically. And I don't remember whether he made a remark, but I know he looked funny, and we all just died of laughing about when he lifted that suitcase. He wondered how possibly I could have had in that suitcase. And that was a lot of fun. Oh, well, and then I remember ice skating on the ice pond, and we had skates that fitted on our shoes. They just screwed on, or you put them on, and they didn't come up over your ankle like they were later. These were just off the bottom of your shoes, and then they screwed on your sole. They were forever coming off, but we managed to skate a good bit, and it was fun. We would go on Saturdays and Sundays where the ponds, there would be different ponds along the way. So that's my ice skating experience. I never was a real crack shot skater, but I skated enough to have fun. And, I told you about the Fairbury Fair, didn't I?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's all I can remember now. Does anybody want to ask me some questions? Well, Leslie, what was you asking?
Well, I was
How
wondering,
many places you live?
Oh, yeah, how many places I live. Well, the amount of places I lived in my life, as I recall, was the Porter place, and then I think I lived later on the Kice place. Well, it was the house where my older brother and sister kept house, and then when we farmed the other place. And then later on I lived at that place too. And I can't recall just how many years I lived at each place. But then we moved down to the Fishback old homestead at Lexington, near Lexington. And then I lived there, well, until I was married. And that was in 1920. And then after I was married, we lived in the Caldwell place for 12 years. Then we moved to Randolph in 1933, and I lived there. And our address at first was Randolph, but then they later just started the route of the 3 routes, and our present address is Hayward. Gave it a Hayward address. And,
Where's the old Fishbank place, Mother, from the Caldwell or Grandpa Jones's place? How far was your people?
well, it was real close. You see, the Fishbank, the Caldwell place is where we lived when we was married. But I lived in, it was east. It was east. It was where Ed Kale lived.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell about when you and Dad got married, as far as who married you and where at and so forth?
Well, we was married in Chenal, Illinois, by Reverend Davy. And he was the preacher that preached out at Salem Church. But he was really a Methodist preacher. I think the preachers formerly that preached at Salem were Presbyterian preachers, but this one was a Methodist. And he was from, it seemed to me he lived at Dwight, Illinois. But he preached at Chenal. And, well, we was married, and then we came back home to my parents' house and had a wedding supper with just the members of Roy's and my family present.
That was your honeymoon too, huh?
Yeah, yeah, we had a short honeymoon. We went to the Caldwell place.
Why don't you tell us about when you moved here to Randolph?
Oh, well, in 1933, then we had to move from the Caldwell place, so we were hunting around for a place to rent or to buy, and we came upon this, the present place where I live, at south of Bloomington, at Randolph, and we liked the looks of it. It was a run-down place when we looked at it, but of course Roy saw possibilities, and he knew he could fix up the things that needed to be fixed, and so we bought it for $7,000, 46 acres, and the house and barn, and that was the price we had to give for it. That was in 1933, and
But that was right after the Depression, so
yeah, it was hard times the first for a few years.
chinch bugs.
We had, yeah, oh yeah, chintz bugs was one year was real bad. They used creosote to help get rid of them, but that was quite a year.
Going back to when you said the doctor didn't get there for Dick and Ivan, explain how the babies were delivered, or who helped you, or whatever,
Well,
since you had no doctor.
when I couldn't, we couldn't get the doctor out for to deliver the baby. Why, Roy's mother came down, and she did the work of a doctor, and she did very well, because they're here. And then the snow was so deep, all the neighbors was out shoveling snow to try to get the doctor there, but they couldn't quite make it inside.
Did he eventually get there?
Yes, yeah, he eventually got there.
And that was April Fool's Day.
Yeah, April Fool's Day. And March the 27th was when Ivan was born. That was pretty close to the same time of year.
A lot of late snows, wasn't it? What about your clothes and your shoes and all the stuff when you were a young girl?
My
or a young
wedding
lady?
shoe. Oh, I have to describe my wedding outfit. I forgot that. I had a little turban type hat, and it had fur around the edge of it. And then it was embroidered in bright colors of the crown of it. And then it had a nice, a big feather sticking out. It was a really classy hat. And then my coat was really of heavy material. It was, I'm not sure whether it was wool material, but it was a heavy coat. And it was dark brown, and the hat was brown. And my wedding dress, my sister Lottie, she was older than I, and she made my wedding dress.
She made that.
What?
She made that.
Oh, yes.
All
yes.
those pleats?
Oh, well, she bought the pleated material.
All right.
It was a dark blue satin, and made long-waisted, and then it had a flounce that was embroidered with blue and gold yarn, and my sister embroidered all this embroidery, and then the lower part of the skirt was accordion pleated, and we sent the material off to have it accordion pleated at that time. But that was quite a dress to have accordion pleated skirt. That was really something.
Whatever happened to it? Do you still
I
have it?
still got it.
Do you?
Yeah, I still got it. It's turned from blue to a kind of a brownish. Yeah, it's an ugly color. It didn't keep us. I didn't really take that good care of it, I guess. I should have wrapped it in more of papers and stuff. But I just hung it, you know.
And your shoes.
And I had real high-top shoes about halfway up my leg, and they were lace shoes, and they had real high pointed heels that kind of flanged out at the bottom. They was narrow, and then they flanged out a little bit. And they was real pointed toes, and I think they was really too small because they did hurt my feet. I wore them, you know, after I was married some, but they never was very comfortable. But they were brown too, and I don't know why I had a brown outfit and a dark blue dress, but that's the way it was.
Did you use a button hook on them?
Oh, no, not on me. My wedding shoes was lace shoes, but during my young girlhood, we wore button shoes, and they buttoned up along the side. They lapped over, and then the row of buttons, and you had to have a hook, a button hook. That was a very essential thing then. And then you'd run it through the hole in the flapping part, and then catch the button and pull it through. That's the way you button your shoes up.
What did a pair of those shoes cost?
I can't remember. I don't remember. I think my wedding shoes was $12. I think that, as I remember.
And did you buy them in town or order them out of the catalog?
No, I bought them in the store.
Who was Lottie? I know she was
Lottie
your
was
sister.
my oldest sister.
Oldest? Was
Yeah.
she the oldest in the family?
No, Harry was the oldest.
Why don't you name your family?
Well, Harry was my oldest brother, and he lived until he was 80, and he died at the El Paso nursing home. I can't remember. He was there several years in the nursing home. And then Lottie, she was my oldest sister, and she died at Cullum, Illinois. We had some cousins at Cullum called the Remains. I mean, that was their name, Remains. I knew this would be funny to you kids.
Well, every family's got a skeleton somewhere.
She's winking.
My first dance was a highlight, of course, in my life. My older sisters and my older brothers, they went regularly to country dances. The people would have a dance, and they'd just take one room out of the house and take up the carpet or whatever they had and make a dance floor out of it. And then they'd go to these country dances, and they did that regularly. And of course, I wasn't old enough. And then when I got about, I think I was about 14, why I got to go with my older sisters, and I had a new green dress, and it had a cream lace embroidery. It was rounded like this, and the what do they call it? The insertion. It was in the cream lace, and I thought I was the belle of the ball. Of course, I had a very happy evening. But I never attended dances regularly like my sisters did. I don't know, they just kind of went out or something. I don't remember that I ever danced like they did. But I just remember that first one that I had a special dress made for.
Now, are you able to go on and tell about the rest of the people in your family?
Oh,
You never did finish the rest of your brothers and sisters.
oh, yeah. Well, let's see, I was telling about my older sister, wasn't I, making my wedding dress, Lottie, and then Hattie was the next sister, and then Deed, or L.D., he was named L.D. Cleveland, but they called him Deed. I don't know why that was, but that's the way it was. I think he was born when Grover Cleveland was running for president. Or was he president? No, I don't think he was. He was just right. Well, anyway. Anyway, Deed. And then Frank was the next brother, and he left home when he was a young boy, and he didn't communicate with the family, and that was always a sad thing in my life. And well, later we heard things of him, but that was a sad happening. And then Edward, he was the next one, and he lived eventually on the Fishback place, and they built a new house there, and that's where he lived when he died. And then let's see, I came next, and then my brother Walter, and I was very sad that he died. He committed suicide. And then Gertrude was the youngest child. So that was my family of brothers and sisters. There was 9 of us.
What was your parents' name?
Henry and Mary Cale was my parents' names. And they, my father came from Germany when he was a young man. And my mother was born here, of course. I don't remember whether she was born in Peoria. I just don't recall that.
She was Fishback.
Yeah, Mary Fishback. Yes.
That's in that book.
And now what was that other...
Well, you were telling us about the remains of our family.
Well, Lottie, yeah, I was telling about her sewing my wedding dress,
Right.
and she went to live with the remains because they needed help. Well, they had a son that had rheumatism, and he was crippled all of his life. He was a real sweet disposition boy, and we all liked him so much. And they just needed help, and so she went over there to help, different things. She just made her home there. And then that's where she died. She had a stroke, and it was severe that she didn't live very long. And then Hattie lived a long time, and she married L.B. Cooper, and then she died later in life. I don't remember just how old she was.
And that's getting on camera about her dress.
I think so, yeah, about the dress. Do you remember who was in office way back when, or who was the first president you remember?
Well, really, I remember that election time in 1912 when Teddy Roosevelt was running, and some way he lost the nomination, and then he split the Republican Party and formed their own party called the Bull Moonska Party, but they lost that year because he'd split the party. I remember Teddy Roosevelt, and I always liked his family, through reading about him and his big family. And
how about?
Yes.
What about the politics of your family?
oh, well, I don't know whether, but I don't remember my people being strong Republicans. I don't know where I picked that up, but I always was a Republican persuasion. And then, of course, Roy was too, so we made a Republican team, for better or for worse.
When did you start writing poetry?
I can't remember. I didn't write it very much until later years. When I was a girl, I remember writing a little one that said that the apple blossoms they are blooming in the old and gnarled tree, sending fragrance all around it as they nod and toss in glee. And I thought I'd really accomplished something at that time.
And you remember it today.
Yes, but I didn't go on to write poetry when I was young. I was quite, well, I think maybe down here at Randolph. And I began to write to my grandchildren little poems and different things at showers, when they had showers for people. And I just got kind of started. And then just as a hobby, it was just fun to get ideas in my head and make them rhyme. And so then I continued to write birthday poems for my grandchildren, children, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren.
Wayne
See, maybe I can recall a bread-making day when I used to get up and get my bread started.
That's good, that's far along.
Yeah, that'd be
Long time
good.
ago.
It's hard for me to think of a typical day, all the things I did in one
I'll
day.
just take bread making or washing when you boil his clothes.
Oh, the boiling the clothes, I think, is something else.
Then we-
Ready?
Then we can go to Hominy, My Soul.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I remember many days when I started the day out, maybe I was going to bake bread, and I'd set the yeast and get the dough started real early in the morning, and then I would make enough dough. Of course, you have to knead that, and I would pounce around on it considerably, and then I would divide it into, we had two big black bread pans, and it seems to me like I baked 6 loaves at a time. Well, at that, the family was bigger, and that would last, well, sometimes it would last half a week, and I think sometimes maybe a week. But I don't know how we kept the bread that long. Well, I don't think it lasted a week, surely, because we didn't use preservatives, and it did mold. It mold. But then when you had a lot of people eating on it, didn't have time to mold, of course. And then, I would probably work in the garden several hours. And, the days varied. Of course, there was a wash day, and that
Tell
was
about that.
a big day, and you had to hang out the clothes. I enjoyed that, to hang the clothes on the line. We'd have a lot of line full of clothes flapping in the wind. And,
Boiling
uh,
them.
oh, yeah, and we really had white clothes in those days because we had a wash boiler. It was a long utensil called a wash boiler, and we'd fill that half full with water, and then all the white clothes we'd put soap suds and lye soap. We used lye soap at that time. I can tell you about lye soap after I could tell about the washing. And we would put the clothes in there and let them boil, come to a boiling boil a few minutes. And then we had a stick that we'd lift them out with. Why we never got scalded, I can't imagine, but I never did remember being scalded with handling those clothes out of the boiler. And then we used the boiler for cold packing, canning too. You put your fruit or vegetable in the jars, and then we put the jars in the boiler and boil them. Well, corn you had to boil 3 hours, and I think string beans you boiled 2.5 hours. You know, on a hot summer day with a cook stove going, feeding it with coal and cobs, and then you boiled it that long, you know that you endured some heat. And we didn't have air conditioning then.
What did you do after you took the clothes out of the hot water with a stick? What, did you just put them in ice water?
We put them in the rinse water, I think. That's how we did it. It seemed to me like maybe we put
You
them
worked them.
back in the,
You worked them a little.
so, yeah, maybe we put them back in the machine. Honestly, I've kind of forgotten just how to put them, but I remember lifting them out and then, we rinsed them.
How'd you make the lye soap then?
Well, you took lye, and the way I did it was I took water and put in a bowl or a jar or a crock. It had to be earthenware material. You couldn't use aluminum or anything like that. It would eat all the pieces. But with a jar or a crock, and put cold water, and then you would slowly pour that lye in there. Oh, and I forgot about the grease. it was usually, if you saved fryings or when maybe the grease got old or, you know, was rancid. And, well, you could make it look good, but we usually use something that we couldn't use for the other.
Recycle.
Yeah, that's right. And so we would use that for soap grease, we call it soap grease. We would save scraps of grease. And then in time, then we'd measure off, and I can't remember the measurements, but we would measure off so much grease and water, and then we would stir that lye. You had to keep stirring slowly or it would separate. I never had it separate, so I don't know what it meant by, but I know they always cautioned to stir it real slowly, and then that kind of just congealed and went into soap, you know, thick. It was soft. Then you let that cool or dry, and you could put it in boxes, you know, lined with papers, and or you could put it in like a jar. 5-gallon jars, I usually put it in a 5-gallon jar. Then we'd let that set overnight, and then the next morning you'd cut it into bars of soap in squares, and lay it out. Then you'd let it dry some more. You'd lay it out so the air could get to the pieces, and there you had your soap.
Was that the lard in the lye that made the chemical reaction to make the soap?
Yeah, your lard and the lye.
And the lye cleanses.
And you had to be awful careful with the lye that you did, you know, it burned you.
Well, it
It
looks
got
like,
in your eyes, too.
yeah, it looks like the grease though would kind of leave a greasy residue, but the lye took care of that?
Not the lye took care of it. The soap wasn't greasy, no.
How'd you-
It cut grease, you see. If you use the soap in a greasy garment or anything, that cut the grease. After that, we went to soap.
How'd you make hominy then?
Oh, well, Dad always made hominy. Well, he just took corn and water and then put the lye, and he would stir it, and that would, then he'd put it on the back of the stove. And, well, after, I tell you, he would make take the lye while it was real strong and put it on the corn, and then when he would rinse some of that off, he would put it on the back of the stove and let it cook, and that cooks the lye out. But it cooks the corn to get soft, and then he washed it. Then he washed it, time and time and again with water to get that off, but it was real good, really hominy.
Well, what made it swell up? Was that the lye?
No, it's soapy, you know, and the cookie made it swell, just like a kernel
Because
corn.
he started out with just plain old field corn?
Yeah, it was field corn, yeah.
Yellow hominy, it was good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I still like it.
and then we used to dry corn. We'd cut it off of the cob like you can it or something, and spread it out.
You get real teasy. And then in the winter, you cook that.
And then in the winter, you'd cook it, and it would swell up like beans. You know, you'd just have a little bit of corn. It would make a lot. And then I made a dressing. Didn't I cream it? Didn't I?
Yeah, delicious.
Made a cream
Almost
dressing
had
out
that
of it.
burnt taste to
I
it.
mean, that was awful good over mashed potatoes.
Tell us about the cyclone that went through when that...
Well, and then, what year was that? The cyclone? I
I
can't
think 1939.
remember.
I remember you saying something about grabbing up the babies
Well,
or
you
something.
kids was here when we had the
Kenny
cyclone.
had just graduated from high school.
Huh?
Kenny had just graduated high
Oh,
school.
is that right?
That'd be 39.
Is that right? Well, anyway, the cyclone, Dad had just put you to sleep, I think, in the bed upstairs. And then the storm came, and we rushed downstairs,
Sounded like a freak.
and the window was blowing, this west window, the panes was all blowing in, and the roof of the house partly was torn off.
Did anybody go get me or...
Sure, Daddy did.
Well, I think maybe, I don't remember. I think that he did, yeah, went up and got you. And,
Chicken.
and gosh, it was,
Maybe he should have left me up there.
it was scary to say the least.
And the terrible noise from it.
Oh, it just sounded just a terrible noise.
Like a freight train.
Yeah.
Then was there a fire up in the attic one time? Did you have a fire? In the...
Yeah, one of the neighbors,
Ruby.
Reed, no, Raymond Reed. Raymond Reed went by, And yeah, we always laughed about this because he calmly came to the door. He said, I think your house is on fire. We went out to look, and I just don't remember what happened that we put that out. Do you remember?
Yes. You heard me telling on this?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I do.
Clarence Nibby came over and he says, Jonesy, Jonesy, you're...
Oh, yes, I picked up that. I Jonesy.
Yeah, Jonesy, Jonesy, your house is on fire. And then they went up there.
What caused it?
I
He
guess
and Dad.
It was around the old chimney.
Yeah.
they put it out, I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
They
It
got it
didn't
out.
amount to
He
too
didn't
much.
call the fire department. No,
But
they
it was
Didn't have one.
What started it?
But I just, it's kind of
something in the flue or in the chimney.
I believe, yeah,
Spark.
it must have been.
And what about the airplane that crashed? When was that?
Well, then one year, the airplane crashed in the field, and when Dad went down there, I guess he got the wing of it, and he parked it in the shed here. We had it for years. It was quite a...
What happened to the pilot?
They weren't hurt.
They weren't hurt. I don't remember the details of that, really.
Were there ever any car accidents?
What?
Were there ever any car accidents?
Oh, yeah, there were a lot of car accidents.
What about the time that you got hit by the car, Mother? What do you remember about that?
Well, I went to Ladies' Aid, and I was coming home from Ladies' Aid with a group of ladies. They bunched up, you know, one lady would drive, and then she'd pick up others. And I got out of the car, and I was saying goodbye, waving goodbye to them. The next thing I remembered that Dad and, was it Dick? Yeah, Dick was holding me and walking me up the lane. That's the next thing I remember. I got hit, you see. And then people said to me, wasn't that a horrible feeling? And I said, no, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't remember a thing about it.
When was this?
Oh, when
It was in the 40s.
When I was in Springfield.
when Ronnie was a baby,
Who hit you?
Ronnie was little.
I remember Dr. Cummings stitching you up on the couch here because he gave me that curved needle. He left the needle here after he had stitched you
In
up.
my eye, wasn't it?
Right, and then you had a hole in your hip
Oh, well,
from the door handle hit her, and then
well, yes, but I didn't realize that when I was laying on the couch. It wasn't Cummings, it was,
did I say Cummings?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it would have
it
been
was that other one,
Garcia.
Garcia. That and that was just that, he just happened to be going by.
In fact, he followed you in, didn't he?
He knew that the accident had happened, so he came right in, he was right here to examine me, and he fixed my face, or, my eye, and, didn't think it was anything too bad. I could talk and everything. And then after he was gone, I laid there and I felt something wet, and I began to investigate, and here there was a whole lot of blood, and there was a great big hole in my hip.
Where the handle of the
handle
The
of
door handle. They used to be outside the car and
in
they'd
the
be
hospital, and I was in the hospital about 10 days, I think it was.
And you never saw such a bruise.
Oh, it was a horrible bruise, yeah.
What did they do for the hole? Stitch it up?
I think they took stitches, and then they put hot water bottles to it all the time. Heat.
But see, she was in shock when she didn't notice that when the doctor...
Did you ever have any problems from it, Mom?
No, not that I wouldn't say I did. I don't think of anything.
Doesn't bother you when it gets
It doesn't bother me to walk or anything.
weather
And there
changes?
isn't much of a scar there. It's a very faint scar. No,
Did the person who hit you stop or keep going?
No, he kept going, but it wasn't, I don't think it was really his fault. I think
Did he
it-
know he hit
She
you?
probably walked into it.
Well, I didn't see it, and the thing about the other lady said they didn't see that car coming either.
There's old Bill Ingold, I'll never forget
It
that.
was a hill maybe that, I didn't
Did he even
see it
know
or
he hit it?
something.
Oh, yeah, I had to know he hit her. But I think
Yeah, but he didn't stop.
he had been drinking, though. I thought, no, I won't say he was drunk, but I thought there was reference that he had been drinking or had drank a little bit of
I
the road.
thought he was probably to blame. I probably
You're more gracious than people are today.
just walked in front of him,
That'd be
probably.
a good lawsuit
Yeah,
today.
today the lawyer would
Yeah.
follow her in instead of the doctor.
That was sad.
You really never ever had any other major illness, injury, or anything, did you?
Not any injury. Well, I cut my wrist on a piece of glass. I was walking, there was a window pane laying on the table, and as I walked past, I sliced my elbow. I got the scars to show.
When did that happen?
Oh, when I was first married, along that time. And then I went to the doctor, and he put stitches in it. He got
You
me.
never really had a broken bone, did you?
No, I don't recall that I ever had a broken bone. I was in the hospital for surgery in, Ronnie was a year old. That would be how many years ago?
51, because I'm 52.
Yeah, I had surgery that year.
And you had
And then
major surgery and you were 81 years old.
81, and I recovered and never seemed to have any ill effects as far as I know.
Gee, was that surgery you had a year after me because of me, or is that when you decided that I was enough?
No, that
No,
sounds
shouldn't have.
suspicious, but no, it wasn't anything like that. It was an infected ovary.
Oh.
Got infected.
And then the next one was the official taking out of
Yeah.
It was the official
Well,
hysterectomy.
yeah.
I think that's pretty good in all those years to not have any more than that.
Well, I feel very fortunate that I didn't have any more illness.
What do you attribute to your longevity and good condition to?
I don't attribute that to anything that I've done. That's the good Lord's doing. That I'm not taking the credit myself, because I don't believe it was because of the things I ate or didn't drink or anything like that. I just doubt that. It's the higher power that I've got.
Or good food. You'd always had good food.
Yeah, I always felt like that. I'm sure, according to the standards, I should have cholesterol and all those things. But, well, I do, doctor, for high blood pressure. My blood pressure never has been real high, but it was higher than they liked it to be. And so they put me on medication, and I've taken medication, and then they read my blood pressure. It's very good every time. So I've been very fortunate. Then just a year ago, I was on, gave me a heart pill to take. He said it was uneven. My heartbeat was uneven, but I think that occurs in a lot of people. I don't know that was very serious myself. But anyway, I'm on medication for it.
What did you all, go back probably before the time I remember, as far as recreation and stuff, you know, you worked long hours and days, but what did you and Dad do, like social clubs, or did you ever play cards or anything?
Well, no, not really. Our married life, we didn't really play cards or dance or do very much. We went to picture shows sometimes.
You had a dance here.
Well, now that was just one dance. Yeah, when we celebrated our 13th anniversary. That's right. I believe it was 13.
Oh, no, it'd have to be more than that. It was down here.
Well, yes, but you see, we moved down here.
That'd be the year you moved,
I believe it was
13 years after 20 would be 33.
Yeah, I think it was. I always thought it was our 13th anniversary. We did have a country dance, but that was unusual. We hadn't been in the habit of having
Rolled up the rug in the
dances. Yes, that's right. And the what was
Graves.
Graves. They had an did they call it orchestra? Did they call that?
I don't know. It was Mrs. Graves
Well, it
with her
was
red
a
hair.
musical group.
Is that
And
Barry
they-
Martin? Barry Graves
Oh
Martin?
yes, her mother and
Probably Mary. Maybe Fairy played something.
well, I forget just who all belonged. They furnished the music, and we had a square, just the neighbors, you know, and we celebrated the birthday.
Oh, and kids were so excited looking down the stairway.
Yeah, but now that wasn't a usual thing. We didn't attend dances regularly. That was a special celebrating our. And they came from Lexington, the people from Lexington.
But you went to school, the school,
Oh,
Community
yes,
clubs.
the school, they had school clubs, you know, the get-togethers, community clubs. We went to that, and then we went to church.
Didn't you and Grandpa belong to some organizations?
Well, not too many until later. I didn't belong.
You belonged to the Ladies' Aid, always.
Yes, I've always, for years, since we moved down here. Well, I mean, a few years after we moved down here, why, I belonged to Ladies' Aid. And
They just worked.
You have any
We worked mostly and we just,
particular highlights or anything that just comes to mind of the whole 90 years as far as the most
That stands
spectacular?
out, you mean?
Yeah, spectacular or anything that just really...
oh, I never thought much about what was really outstanding in my life. I remember that end of the war, that was really stood out.
World War II or World War What?
World War One. Both wars, but World War One stood out more. That was a terrible relief, a jubilant feeling. I just had such a jubilant feeling.
You would have been how old then?
Well,
1911,
that
you'd
was
have been...
before we was married. That was 20.
You'd have
We
been-
was married 21,
Yeah.
around 19 or 20. Of course, I was too young.
And
I was
that-
terribly in love, you know.
Well, I'm so glad. I'm so glad for our sake.
How did the Second World War affect you? Now, that takes Ivan and Dick.
Well, yeah, that stood out pretty much too. Well, Dick getting wounded, yes, that was a terrible trauma.
And lost Ivan.
Well, yes, that was, well, and Earl, that summer when he died.
Yeah.
You were talking about Ivan Grossman and
I was talking about Ivan Roseman.
No, I was talking about our Ivan.
Yeah, well, you could talk about Ivan and Earl.
Yeah.
About it. As long as you told about how many family stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When you lost Ivan and Earl, how close was that? I mean,
Well,
between when one
Ivan died
versus the other?
before we moved down here in January. The year we moved in March. And then Earl died. It wasn't the next year, was it? It would be the year after.
I think that would
Yeah.
be because he was 20.
Yeah.
He was,
Because it would have been 2 in September. He was lacking 2. Yeah. Well, yeah, those were sad times in my life.
terrible times.
And everything else had to keep going on top of it.
But I didn't dwell on it, you know. Life goes on.
Well, that also was the years when you weren't raising anything crop-wise.
Oh, yeah.
Those
It
were
was
bad.
hard times.
Yeah, those were bad
We
times.
really had hard times making ends meet.
If they had today's medicines back then, do you think they would have probably
Could be.
been
It could
saved,
be.
or
I rather think so.
wasn't it the flu, or
Yeah, summer
complications?
complaint, what they call it summer complaint.
Ivan's wasn't. His was influenza.
Flu, yeah, Ryland's was flu, yeah.
And they called their Earl's summer complaint, but he was dead in one day, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, that was sad.
well, crib deaths were overnight, and they
Yeah.
still haven't figured that out.
But they,
Now, what was the other topic?
Yeah, let's get on to the more pleasant one. We were talking about highlights and spectacular things.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Dad always said that he felt fortunate because he got to see where the automobile invented, and then he got to see man on the moon. So he felt like that was a
Yeah.
pretty broad spectrum that he got in on.
Well, yeah.
wait till Leonard, she's gotta go.
Wink, wink.
Well, first that we got electricity was after we moved down to Randolph, and I forget the exact year, but it was after 1933. It was soon after that. And of course, then after we got electricity, that seemed like heaven, and we got the plumbing. And Doc Rutledge from Hayworth installed the plumbing, and it was quite an experience when I first used the stool. I was afraid. It was an unusual feeling, but it was sure good to have indoor plumbing. And Cliff Grove, he was a good electrician. I don't think he had to have a license at that time. I don't believe he did. He was just a neighbor, a friend of Roy's, and he was good at electricity. And he wired our house, and has been doing all these years. And I'm hoping it's going to last.
What'd you use here at home before you got the electricity, as far as lamps,
Lamps,
or whatever?
Lamps for the house. We graduated from the old style lamps that just had a common chimney to the Aladdin lamp. And it had a mantle, a little white mantle. And you had to pump it. It was a gasoline. You burned gasoline. I think they must have been dangerous, but we used them. And you had a little pumping. You pumped air in some way.
Like a blowtorch.
Yeah,
You
kept
pressurized it.
Yeah, under pressure. Then it gave a white light. Oh, it was a beautiful light compared to the yellow flame that the common lamp, had. And this was a white light, and we thought, oh, it was so much easier to read by. We thought we'd progressed quite a bit in the last deal.
When did you get the telephone then?
Oh, I can't recall the year that we first had the telephone. I really can't. We had that before we moved, so it was quite early. I can't remember. I can't say when we first got the party line.
Do you remember what it cost Dad and you to,
And that's
plumb the
ano-
house or for the electricity?
That's another thing. I don't remember.
What, did Dad and Cliff go buy the supplies?
Yeah, they'd go to town and Cliff helped pick out, get the most of it, the fixtures. Yeah, they did I didn't, and I didn't even think of choosing. I just left that to Cliff because I thought he knew more about what would work in the house than I did.
So he picked out the light fixtures?
The side light bulb. And then, of course, we had one in here, in the dining room, that we don't have now. And electricity wipers and that stuff.
Well, you used to sew for us kids.
Well, that wasn't too unusual.
No, but you worked that in with your work.
Oh, tell us about the days of the rationing stamps and the
Oh,
war.
well, yeah, during the war, now that was World War II, or was
Yeah.
World War One?
That was World War II.
World War II, oh, yes, when you were kids. And we had to have books called, and then we had rationing stamps, and you could only get stuff that your stamps would get. And let's see, what was the rationing stamps based on? I kind of...
Well, there was a certain kind of stamp for gas. I mean,
Farmers or
yeah, farmers got a different stamp than
Yeah.
town people for gas.
Some of that I've really kind of forgotten how it worked.
But it was on sugar.
But I remember flour and sugar was the thing that I remember that we had to have stamps for. And then you got so many stamps according to the members in your family. That was it. Yeah.
Then did you give those to where'd you get those from? The county board or the rationing
County
board? Or?
board, they called it the rationing board. And there was quite a controversy and people cheating about that.
You know.
Yeah.
The black market and all that
Yeah,
good
oh
stuff.
yeah, there was a lot of that going on to get their stamps by hook and by crook.
Tell me about the old cream separator that I vaguely remember.
Well, the cream separator was it had a big bowl on the top, and then the machinery, it had spouts coming out below that bowl, and the cream came out of one, and the milk, skim milk out of the other. And you turned a handle, and there was discs, several, a whole
Like
row of
filters.
real fine,
Like a filter.
filtered. And they just spins and went so fast that they would separate the cream from the milk. And I always marveled at that process, that invention was just something that they could separate cream from milk. But that's what they did, and then we'd take the cream and save it in a 5-gallon can and take it to town Wednesdays and Saturday nights and get our groceries. And
You sold the cream?
cream, yeah. And the skim milk we fed to the hogs or chickens or whatever.
But years ago, you churned that.
Oh, well, yeah, earlier we had a churn, the kind that I remember. When I was home as a girl, we had a barrel churn, and you turn it, it was just like a barrel, and that churned the butter. and then, well, you churn the cream, I mean, to make butter.
And
you-
back then you had to skim the cream, didn't you?
Yeah,
Yourself.
we had a little skimmer with holes in it, a little utensil. Then you'd let the milk set, and the cream would rise to the top, and you take the skimmer and skim the cream and save it in a separate container, and that was your cream. But then later, the separator came in to be, and then that was the way we separated, and the skimmed milk was fed to the hogs or chickens or whatever.
And today we sell it to everybody that's worried about cholesterol.
Yeah, that's right.
Until then, about then, in the later years, the milk route, selling to the milk route.
Well, there would be a milk route, and the driver of a truck would pick up that was how we got rid of this cream that we say, or the milk, you know. But some people, I think, sold milk. They had troughs, seemed to me like they had troughs with cold water that they would pump, you know, with the pump.
To cool the
keep it
milk
cool.
before they put it
Yeah.
in the can.
Mhm.
But when you first separated it yourself and made butter with the cream and stuff, you fed the rest of the hogs. You didn't sell any at that time other than the cream.
No, I think that was before we sold it, I think.
Yeah, you
When we
used all
made
the
the butter ourselves.
you used all the butter then just for your own self
Yeah.
that you churned.
Yeah, churned butter for, yeah, I don't think we sold butter. I don't think.
And then margarine came in, and you sold
Oh.
all your milk and bought your
Yeah, and
margarine.
bought margarine. And there was quite a controversy about butter and margarine, which was the best. Of course, the farmers, they okayed the butter, and they wanted everybody to use butter. And of course, the margarine people wanted to use margarine. And but later turned out that this butter with cholesterol item, you know, why it wasn't as good to have butter. The oleo was better.
And back then, the oleo came white, and you had to pop a little
I
button and
remember,
put the
yeah,
color
we
in.
had
remember
to,
that.
yeah, it came in white bars, and then we had a little color capsule that we had put in with the coloring, and then we had to mix that. And I know every time we bought new oleo, well, you had to mix that into that capsule to make it yellow. And but we used that for years, and I guess it wasn't too bad for it.
What's your favorite food, Mom?
Oh my goodness, fried chicken I think is one. I've always been. Chicken and noodles, and well, the noodles that you used to make with chicken and noodles is a far cry from the way I make them today. I mean, they tasted different because those chickens, I don't know, they just seem so fresh taste. Well, one thing, they weren't frozen. We killed a fresh chicken, and because we didn't have refrigeration, we had to cook it after we killed it, and that was fresh, and that made good broth, and good broth is what makes good noodles. So I can remember the long days going by that the noodles today just don't taste like those good noodles a long
Fresh
ago.
sweet corn picked out of the field.
Yeah, sweet. Well, in fact, when we first used roasting here, we used field corn. We didn't use the plant sweet corn. That was unknown to our family. Maybe some families did, but we just used the field corn and picked those ears, and then we'd add a little sugar. We thought those were delicious. Then we got to buying sweet corn seed and raising sweet corn. It was much better than the field corn. And then we would dry the corn and can it.
Tell us about your school days. What was your favorite subjects? And
Well, my school days, my favorite subject was history and reading. Arithmetic was really bad I wasn't as good at figures. I just never could figure with figures. I always envied the people that was good at figures. It made it difficult when you're not very good at them. But
how many subjects did you have, though, back
we had about 8 subjects, I think. We had reading, as I remember when I was a girl, up until I graduated from the 8th grade. We had reading, writing, arithmetic, grammar, orthography, civics, did I say geography? Yeah, no, geography. Yeah, we had geography, and I think that's a great thing to study. And, now how many did I?
Writing,
I said writing.
You said reading, writing, arithmetic, and then you said,
orthography,
And civics,
yeah, but you said
orthography,
orthography,
orthography.
and then geography,
That was the words and the meaning of words.
and then civics.
Well, how many would that be?
I'm up to 6 or 7 now.
Well, maybe that's all we had. I can't
Do you have
recall.
music?
No, I didn't have music in school.
And where did you learn? Where did you learn all your music then from that?
Hazel,
lady?
Hannah Harms, Hannah Harms, the music teacher. That's where I learned my music. We got a second-handed piano, and that was a highlight. You asked about highlights in my life. When we got that piano was one of them, and I was so happy to take lessons. But I really wasn't a real musical person. I wouldn't consider that I was a real music. I had to study for everything I learned in music. It wasn't natural.
If someone said to you, okay, you can go back and do something today that you never got to do during your lifetime, is there anything that you would probably say, well, I would like to have done that?
I'd like to have traveled more. I'd love the thought to travel to other countries. I would like to see the things in the United States before I traveled abroad, but I would like to have traveled abroad. Yeah, I really always felt like I was restricted on travel, although Dad and I took several trips. When you counted them up, we went with Edwin and Lula out west. The one trip was we didn't make Yellowstone. We went
Black
to
Hills,
Black
wasn't it?
Hills. Oh, and the poor president.
Mount Rushmore.
Huh?
Mount
Mount
Rushmore.
Rushmore. That was a highlight in my life because one time I was ironing, and they had something on the radio. I was listening. That was after we had radio, and I was listening to that radio, and they were talking about Mount Rushmore, and you know what it was. And I was just thinking, oh, I would love to see that, those presidents, carved in that stone. And it was the same year that when Edwin and Lula came along, and we went out west and saw Mount Rushmore. That was really a culmination of one of my dreams.
And then you went to Niagara Falls.
Yes, and then with Drex and Pauline, we went out east and saw Niagara Falls and was out in Canada ways. That was a highlight. Then we came home by the way of Wisconsin and saw Aunt Dora, who lived out in the Moondigs.
And you got to go to Montana.
Yes, and then later I got to go to Montana to see my granddaughter, and I got to ride on the airplane. Let's see, the first time I went with Kenny and Doris in the car, and that was a really highlight. I enjoyed that just so much. It was such a big deal. And then, let's see, was that the trip that we drove through the mountains at night?
Yes.
And I was really kind of scared.
The Little Bighorn.
You went with Kenny and Doris to Washington, D.C., too.
Yeah, that's what I said. Later, we had traveled more than I realized. It just seemed like I was restricted. In traveling, I would have liked to go to many places, but when I counted them up, we didn't do too bad. Yeah, we went with Doris and Kenny to Washington, D.C., and that was very
That was when Ronnie was
And that's when we met Ronnie, when he was in the service, and we met him. And I knew I called him one time, and then like a dummy, I hung up the receiver instead of laying it down. For I don't know what I went to do, that I had to call back or something. Oh, I felt so dumb.
So you get to go a lot of places. You just didn't get to go
And I
quite
was
as much
was
as
there
you
any
wanted.
more places? It seems to me like there was another place that we went.
You used to go down south to his old army buddy, too, down to Mackinac.
Well,
didn't
the
you?
southern part of
We
the
went
state.
to Arkansas.
I knew there was something else that
When
we...
Merle and I went with you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Dad and I and Merlin. Oh, yes, when you were born. And we left after the county fair, and everybody was so tired. You kids were so tired, which wasn't a very good time to start a trip on. But we went to Cliff Rose's cabin and stayed there, and there was chiggers too, and it was hot. And
We
then
went to the little round church over in Iowa, and where
that
did we
was
go? We went
that was a
Pennsylvania.
day trip, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We didn't stay, I don't think, overnight this time.
Go back to school then. Did you have to go home and work? Is why you didn't get to go on to high school, or did they have high schools then?
Oh, they had high school, and I always felt bad that I wasn't privileged. I know my folks didn't think they had the money to send me to high school, so I just didn't go.
Which lots of people did then.
Yeah, there was more
Your
that
rural
didn't go to school. It wasn't like now. There's many that go to high school now that. But my girlfriends, my new girlfriends, they all went to high school, and I used to get letters. They would write about their high school experience, and I really felt bad about that. I really always wanted to go. Some kids don't want to go, but I did want to go, but I wasn't privileged to, and I always missed the fact that I hadn't gone to high school.
Back then, though, it was a privilege if you could go.
Oh yes, it was.
Today it's mandatory.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you like spaghetti.
I know, I was thinking about that.
That'll get a motive to the people. If it shows.
I didn't want you to get there and wonder why I had said I'd leave it open. I didn't. But I didn't plan on being here, but we got to making movies. I rented a theater pickup for you.
You don't have to get that developed.
Oh, it is.
I thought maybe you were going to get
You're busy. Well, the old back's doing pretty good. If I was doing good, I wouldn't have left back for the next a good time to be there. That's great.
Dad,
What?
what are you getting a picture of?
Angelina.
Dad, there's your wedding picture.